Vale.
من فوتبال دوست ندارم.
Mhm.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Max and I learned Persian this year, and I'd like to show you what exactly happened in the month of October. So I tell you my problems, I tell you what's going well. But before we jump in, I'd like to first give you a 1-minute recap of exactly what happened before the month of October. So I started the 1st of January, and the first 100 days I studied for exactly 100 hours, so 1 hour every day. I memorized parts of a song to get a connection with the language. I studied and memorized a cartoon for the same reason, and I followed some online classes with my friend Nima, who is from Tehran, and he was very, very hard on me. Then I slowed down. I studied every morning using a book, almost every morning, and I had a useless group class. The teacher of that group class was very bad and not experienced, and I did not learn anything there. It really demotivated me, but I kept studying myself, of course. Now, in the summer, I did not do anything for 6 weeks, but in September I got back on track and started doing 1 hour a day again, mainly using my favorite application called Link. The main thing I do there is the main thing I always do. I listen, I read, and I listen and I read. And I try to understand what I'm reading and what I'm listening by clicking on the words and translating them. So I reached 500 known words on Link by the 28th of August, even though I knew a lot more words by then. The 27th of September, I finished reading all the mini stories. Now, the mini stories on Link are short stories written especially for beginners. They contain the most used phrases and expressions and vocabulary. And of course, they purposefully make use of the frequently used verbs, adjectives as a part of that. So they use, for example, all the time the verbs to do, can, to be able to want, to cook, to drink, to eat, etc. And adjectives like small, big, important, interesting, good, bad, etc. And the first 20 stories are then in the present tense, and then after that the tenses are mixed. Now, I just listened and read them over and over again, translating unknown words. And I always keep in mind that the important words will come back if you want to or not. So the words that come back are the words that are most important, and the words that do not come back are also not important enough, because otherwise they would be used. So you just have to keep going. Then the 1st of October, which is the first day of this or of the previous month, and that's the month that this video is about, I had my first full conversation in Farsi.
من فوتبال دوست ندارم.
Mhm.
یا من روزنامه میخونم. دوست من روزنامه نمیخونه.
Vale.
The day after that, I had another conversation with a Farsi teacher. I just had shoulder surgery, so I couldn't do anything else. Anyway, I could not really use my mouse, right? Because then you have to move your shoulder. 2 teachers I had on this day were great. On this day and the next day, so the 1st and the 2nd of October 2022, they did not fall back into English. They were patient, and their patience meant I could manage to communicate in Farsi for a full hour while being on heavy medication. And the 3rd of October, I thought I would be very good in Farsi because I had a big conversation 2 times, right? Didn't I? Now, it turned out that day number 3, I did not really understand the mini stories, even though I had listened and read most of them at least 2 times, and some of them 10 times. Never expect a big change in language learning. The process is a slow one. So I had another class the 9th of October, and this class was not very smooth, since I forgot all the words of the previous class. We talked about weight and height, and I also didn't practice the numbers, so I actually never really studied the numbers thoroughly, so it was a rough class. The next day, or the next week, on October 15th, I wrote, during my talk yesterday, I realized the words like nothing, always, sometimes, often, and words like that were missing from my active vocabulary. So I studied these adverbs using Link and some videos on YouTube, and I wrote some sentences and stuff down. I hope to use those in my next class. Then I also read some beginner stories on Link, and I read them quite quickly now. So the first 3 weeks summarized, what I did was reading more stories on Link. When I did not feel like looking at the screen, I tried to listen to 4 mini stories that I chose because I thought they were very interesting. Those stories were story 43, 44, 45 and 46 of the Link mini stories. I downloaded them on my phone, and then whenever I have some time or I feel like studying but not like reading, I go walk through the park or something and listen to them. I must have read them 4 times and listened to them about 20 times each, and I still not completely get them at this point. It is mind-boggling. And then at the end of the month, October 30, I write, in the morning I decided to finally read stories 43 and 44 again, and listening to them after that again, and I did understand. That feels very nice. I put subtitles on my video and counted it as Farsi study time. Then I wrote some more subtitles, but they disappeared when I did not save them correctly, and it was all for nothing. You see, the last few days of October, my study time was spent writing subtitles for the previous videos in which I spoke Farsi. So I wrote on the last day of October, put subtitles on my day 296 speaking video. It is great practice and so cool to do something different. I translate each and every sentence. It is extremely useful. Okay, so that was what I did this month. Summarizing, I spent 29.4 hours on Farsi this month. About 5 hours of those I spoke Farsi during 5 online classes. About 20 hours I spent reading and listening on Link, or with my phone listening to the audios of the Link stories. And the remaining 4 hours or so I spent writing down sentences and making 2 games. So the 2 games. Game number 1, I chose a video from Persian Learning where they show opposites in Persian. I wrote them down on little cards and mixed them. And the game is to match the opposites without looking at the backside where the translation is. I also made another paper, so game number 2. I drew a cube and I had to place the right preposition on the right part of the cube. I did notice that this does not help very much. It is a nice activity and it was, fun, but I did not really learn a lot from it. I will always learn way more from reading and listening to stories. But sometimes I like doing these activities because it keeps things interesting and a little bit of variety is nice. Last thing I tell you about my problems, and then I'd like to ask you for help. In this month, I felt demotivated many times because I can't find many Persian people or Persian places in my hometown. I kept wondering why I did not study Arabic or Italian, things like that. So in the hours I have spent on Farsi, right now, I could have improved my French up to a B2 level and learned Italian to a B1 level, Okay, problem number 2. After the conversations I had, I felt great, but then the next day or 2 days later, I had forgotten everything.
Compounding interest and it's gone.
I forget everything immediately after I have the class,
What? It's gone. It's all gone.
Because I don't like revising the stuff, so I find that really boring. So I don't revise it, and then when I come back the next class, we basically have to do everything again. So that's a bit demotivating. That brings me actually to my general problem, which is when to revise and when not to revise. So this is my question to you. I can't figure out exactly when it is time to review or revise what I've learned, or when it's time to keep going, to keep reading and listening to new stuff. My tendency is to just keep going, and that worked fine with Spanish and German and etc. But now with Farsi, I just forget too much, it seems. So too often, too quickly. So what should I do is my question to you. Should I make a certain rule for myself? Should I just do what I like? Should I, for example, use 1 out of 10 hours to revise, or 10 minutes each session, or just go with the flow? What do you think is best? Thank you for answering, by the way. You can answer in the comments, of course. And despite of all these issues, I'm very happy with my progress, though. Very happy. Persian is still an amazing language, and most importantly of all, I do know now that I will learn Farsi up to fluency sooner or later. If I can have a conversation of an hour right now, I can have a good conversation of an hour next year. I'm sure of that. So thanks for watching, and good luck to you. I hope you learn Persian or any other language as well. And I will see you when I'm better.